My phone was in my hand, screen brightness dimmed, the battery sitting at 14%. I wasn't really doing anything, just scrolling. The house was dead quiet, except for the low buzz of the fridge and the occasional gust of wind that rattled the loose panel on the back porch. Outside, the moonlight spilled in slanted silver streaks through the window blinds, catching the edge of my empty coffee mug. The clock on the microwave blinked 12:41 a.m. She was late. Her flight should have landed hours ago. But I hadn't texted her to check. I told myself I didn't want to seem clingy, but deep down I think I was testing her. I wanted to see if she'd think of me on her own. It wasn't the kind of insecurity I was used to feeling. Not with Kate. But something about this trip had been different. She had gone to San Diego for a design forum. At least that's what she said. Kate worked as a brand strategist for a trendy interior design company based in Austin. Travel came with the job. She'd done Boston, Portland, LA. All typical. And I never had a reason to doubt her. But this trip had started on a strange note. I remember the way she packed. Fast, distracted, like her hands already knew what they were doing before her mind caught up. She tossed in heels I'd never seen before and a black silk blouse that still had the tag on it. When I asked if she needed a ride to the airport, she said no. Carmen from work was picking her up. Carmen, who I'd only met once in passing. That was red flag number 1. Still, I let it go. Because that's what trust looks like, right? While she was away, her messages had been unusually bright. Too bright. The emojis were excessive hearts, champagne glasses, fire symbols. "We let it," she wrote after day 1. "Best scallops of my life, fire, fire, fire," after day 2. She sent a photo of the hotel bar. The place was sleek and dimly lit, with 2 flutes of Prosecco on the table. Just 2. I stared at that picture for a long time. I told myself maybe Carmen took it. Maybe the waitress offered a free pour. Maybe it meant nothing. But the doubt was already planted. That's when the sound came. Tires rolling across gravel. Soft. Familiar. Then the quiet slam of a car door. I froze. For a moment, my stomach tightened and my body went still, like a dog sensing a storm before it hits. She was home. I didn't move right away. I listened. The jingle of keys. The click of the door unlocking. Then the soft creak of it opening. And there she was. Kate stood in the entryway, framed by the porch light. Her hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, and she wore a soft gray cardigan over a fitted top I didn't recognize. In one hand, she clutched her carry-on. In the other, her phone, which she never once looked up from. She was grinning, giggling, at something on the screen, her thumb flicking across it rapidly. She hadn't seen me yet. I watched from the kitchen as she set her suitcase down by the stairs and kicked off her shoes like muscle memory. There was something carefree in her movements, almost buoyant. Her energy radiated in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. When she finally looked up and noticed me, her smile widened. "Hey, babe," she said, voice bright, airy, like a breeze coming through an open window. "You're still up." "Couldn't sleep," I said, keeping my tone neutral. I set my phone face down on the table and forced a smile. "Welcome back." She moved toward the fridge, opened it, and pulled out a bottle of water without even glancing in my direction. "You won't believe this trip. Crazy, but amazing. Seriously. I feel like I haven't stopped moving since we landed." I leaned back in my chair, watching her. "That's a good thing, right?" "Oh yeah," she replied quickly. Too quickly. We crushed the pitch. Totally impressed the board. Our creative deck was the cleanest they've seen in years. Maya said that herself. Oh, and the dinners were insane. They took us to this rooftop restaurant last night, like actual Michelin star. Mushroom risotto that tasted like a dream. She was still smiling, still scrolling on her phone. Every few seconds she'd smirk or shake her head, typing rapidly with both thumbs. I tried not to stare, but my chest was tightening. Who was she messaging right now? At 12:48 in the morning? "That's great," I murmured. "Sounds like it went really well." "It did," she said, finally setting her phone down on the counter. But face down, just like I had done. Oh, and the hotel. Gorgeous. Sleek. Very modern. Glass elevators and art in the lobby. Honestly, I could live there. I nodded slowly. Glad you had a good time. There was a pause. A short one. Her eyes met mine for a flicker of a second and then darted away, as if something passed between us too fast for either of us to name. She picked up her water bottle, took a sip, and cleared her throat. I'm gonna unpack real quick, she said, already walking toward the stairs. Then crash. I'm wiped. I watched her disappear up the staircase. Her phone buzzed softly once, then again. She didn't turn back, didn't even say goodnight. I sat there in silence for a few more minutes. The fridge buzzed again. A light in the upstairs hallway flicked on. And yet, in that quiet, all I could feel was the sound of something cracking, like a hairline fracture running silently down the spine of something once whole. Because something was wrong. And I knew it. I didn't follow her upstairs right away. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where she had just been standing, her laughter still echoing in the back of my mind like a song I didn't recognize. There had been something in her eyes. Not guilt, not quite, but a sparkle I couldn't place. It wasn't the glow of achievement. It wasn't joy over a job well done. It was something deeper. More personal. Like she'd just come back from somewhere sacred and secret and I hadn't been invited. Eventually, I stood up. The house creaked beneath my steps as I walked toward the staircase. Her suitcase was still where she had left it at the base of the stairs, propped neatly against the wall. She never left it there. Normally, she'd bring it up to the bedroom first thing. I glanced down. The front pocket was half-zipped. A folded slip of paper poked out just slightly. But before I could take a closer look, I heard her voice from upstairs. No, not now. It wasn't loud. It was whispered, barely audible over the hum of the AC, but the urgency in her tone was unmistakable. My pulse jumped. I froze midway up the stairs, straining to hear more. There was a soft rustle, the unmistakable zip of a bag being opened, the crinkle of paper. Then silence. Not the kind of silence you get when someone is doing nothing, but the kind you get when someone is holding their breath, hoping not to be heard. I took another slow step. From the bedroom doorway, I could see the edge of the bed. Kate sat hunched over her suitcase, her back to me. The overhead light was off, but the soft glow of her bedside lamp cast a golden ring around her. Her shoulders were rigid, hands moving quickly. She shoved something into the bottom of the suitcase and yanked the zipper closed in one swift motion. What's going on? I asked. She flinched. Actually flinched like she'd forgotten I existed. Her head whipped around, eyes wide for a split second before she replaced the look with a rehearsed, casual smile. Jesus, you scared me, she said, forcing a small laugh. Nothing, just unpacking. Sounded like you were talking to someone, I said, stepping into the room. She stood quickly, brushing her palms on her jeans. Oh no, just mumbling to myself. I'm exhausted. I think my brain is still in a hotel room somewhere in San Diego. I nodded, but my eyes went to the suitcase. She noticed. Her smile faltered. It's just work stuff. Presentation notes and receipts. You know, boring expense report crap. I raised an eyebrow. Okay. She turned toward the bathroom. I'm gonna wash up before bed. I watched her retreat behind the door. The light clicked on. The faucet ran. Then the unmistakable sound of the lock turning. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at her suitcase. Something didn't add up. Kate had always been transparent with me, sometimes to a fault. She would ramble about her coworkers, her boss Maya, her deadlines, the irritating guy from marketing who chewed gum too loudly. But this trip? She'd barely mention names. No anecdotes. No complaints. Only highlights. Carefully polished snippets of perfection, like she was trying to sell me a version of her experience that wasn't entirely true. I stood, crossed the room, and knelt in front of her suitcase. It was still warm to the touch, like it hadn't had time to cool from the road. I placed my hand on the zipper but hesitated. Something about opening her bag felt like crossing a line. A boundary I'd always promised myself I wouldn't break. But then again, something about her lately felt like she'd crossed one first. Still, I stopped myself. For now. Instead, I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. The street outside was deserted. A few porch lights glowed from neighboring houses, but everything else was bathed in silence. I looked at our car in the driveway, her sides still warm, driver's seat adjusted forward. Had she driven herself from the airport? She said Carmen dropped her off. But I never heard a second door slam. No voices. No headlights pulling away. And her suitcase was light, too light for a full week's travel. I heard the bathroom door unlock. I turned just as she stepped out wrapped in a towel, hair damp and curling at the ends. Her eyes flicked to me for half a second. "Gonna get in bed?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "In a minute." She nodded and disappeared into the closet. I sat back on the bed, mind spinning. There were moments in life when your gut spoke louder than reason, when instinct screamed something your heart wasn't ready to hear. This was one of them. Kate returned in a cotton tee and shorts, looking every bit like the woman I married. She climbed into bed, pulled the covers up to her chin, and glanced at me with a lazy smile. "You're being quiet," she said softly. "Just tired," I lied. She nodded. "Me too." I got into bed beside her, the mattress dipping slightly under my weight. For the first time in a long time, the space between us felt larger than the bed itself. She turned on her side, facing away. A moment later, I heard the slow rhythm of her breathing. But I couldn't sleep. Instead, I stared at the ceiling. My mind ran through every moment of the past few days, her messages, her photos, the tone in her voice, the way she smiled at her phone, the nervous laughter, the way she avoided my eyes when I asked simple questions. And most of all, the paper she had hidden. Whatever it was, she hadn't wanted me to see it. The clock read 2:18 a.m. I turned toward her, watching the slow rise and fall of her shoulders. She looked peaceful, innocent. If I hadn't seen what I'd seen, I'd believe she had nothing to hide. But I knew better. Something had changed, and I intended to find out exactly what it was. I didn't sleep that night. I must have stared at the ceiling for 3 straight hours, heart pounding against my ribs, brain looping like a broken cassette. I kept thinking about the tone in her voice, the panicked whisper I'd overheard, the snap of her suitcase zipping closed too fast. I kept seeing her smile, too wide, too polished. It wasn't joy. It was performance. And I couldn't stop replaying the moment she looked at me and said, "Just work stuff." A lie. I waited until her breathing had settled into a steady rhythm, the kind that told me she'd slipped into sleep. I counted to 60, then again, just to be sure. Her back was turned to me. She hadn't moved in half an hour. I got up slowly, quietly, every motion deliberate. The bedroom door creaked open, but I caught it with my fingers before it could betray me. The hallway was cold. My bare feet pressed against the hardwood, the silence broken only by the ticking of the wall clock in the living room. I padded down the stairs and stood over the suitcase she'd left by the door. It was still there. Still zipped. Still hiding something. I lowered myself to the floor, my fingers resting on the zipper for a long, still moment. My heart was racing, and a small voice in my head asked if I was ready for what I might find. And then I opened it. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place: her favorite hoodie, a pair of designer heels, a few rolled-up tops, toiletry bag. I moved things around carefully, methodically, trying to leave no trace of tampering. That's when I saw something small tucked beneath a zippered mesh pocket. A black box, about the size of a paperback, wrapped neatly with a thin red ribbon. I froze. Kate never wrapped anything. Not gifts, not even for birthdays. She used bags and always said, "I'm not good at the neat stuff." But this was immaculate. Clean folds. Precise corners. A ribbon tied in a bow so perfect it looked like it had been done by a store clerk. I pulled it out and turned it over. There was no label. No name. No price tag. Just the unmistakable weight of secrecy. My fingers trembled slightly as I untied the ribbon. The bow came loose like it had been waiting for this moment. I lifted the lid. And I saw black lace. Delicate, expensive-looking lingerie, more daring than anything Kate had ever worn for me. A strappy bra with sheer cups, matching bottoms that looked like they'd been cut from air. It was sensual in a way I hadn't seen from her in years. My throat dried instantly. This wasn't for me. And I knew it. Still, I searched for a reason. Maybe she bought it for herself. Maybe it was some indulgent gift she never mentioned. Maybe it was a... Then I saw the note. Tucked into the folds of the bra was a small ivory card. Handwritten. Familiar loops and curves. Kate's handwriting. For us when we're finally alone. No signature. No name. Just those 8 words. I sat there on the floor, still holding the box, as my chest tightened to the point of pain. It was like someone had pressed a fist into my sternum and started twisting. I reread the words a second time. Then a third. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until the sound of it leaving my lungs filled the quiet room. This was it. Not suspicion. Not gut instinct. This was proof. Not circumstantial. Not imagined. Real. Undeniable. I put the box back exactly how I found it. Ribbon tied. Card returned. Lid closed. I folded everything into the suitcase as precisely as I could, even smoothing the hoodie back over the top. I zipped the case shut with slow, calculated fingers, my heartbeat still thundering behind my ears. Then I stood there, staring at it. That suitcase. That box. That note. The entire weight of betrayal compacted into luggage. I didn't cry. Not then. Anger was easier than heartbreak. Anger gave me something to hold onto. I walked back to the kitchen, trying to breathe. My hands were shaking. I poured myself a glass of water and downed it in 3 swallows. Then I leaned against the counter, the cool tile pressing into my back. She lied. She brought another man into her life, into her body, while I sat at home thinking about what show we'd watch next when she got back. I had debated getting us a weekend away together. Just 2 nights in the hill country. Some wine. A cabin. I even had tabs open on my laptop. But while I was planning romantic getaways, she was already living one with someone else. I glanced at her phone sitting on the counter. It was locked, of course. But Kate had never been secretive with passwords. For years, it had been the same, our wedding date. She used it for almost everything. I picked it up and tried. 0912. September 12th. The day we got married. It unlocked. Of course it did. I stared at the home screen. Dozens of app icons. Messages. Photos. Her mail app was overflowing. Notifications blinked at the top. It all looked so normal. I opened her messages app. At first, there was nothing unusual, texts from her team, Maya, a couple of friends I recognized. Then I scrolled further and found it. Gavin Brooks. The name hit me like a slap. I'd never heard her mention him. Not once. Not even in passing. And yet, their thread was long. Full of texts. Hundreds of them. My thumb scrolled and scrolled until it cramped. Late-night messages. Midday check-ins. Photos. Voice notes. Heart emojis. That kind of language you use when you're infatuated. That kind of tone you think you can hide in pixels. One message stopped me cold. Kate, I can't stop thinking about this weekend. Everything felt so, right? Gavin, you were perfect. Every part of you. I miss you already. Kate, I hate sneaking around. But I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I dropped the phone onto the counter like it burned. I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unread it. It was real. I stood there in our kitchen, bathed in the pale light of betrayal, heart hammering against my ribs like a warning bell. This wasn't an emotional connection. This wasn't some innocent flirtation. This was physical. An asterisk mate. Repeated. She didn't stumble. She made a choice. And the thing that crushed me most was how easy she made it look. Like she could live 2 lives and never break a sweat. I walked back upstairs in silence. She was still asleep, curled into the pillow, face peaceful. Peaceful. I stared at her for a long time, studying the curve of her shoulders, the way her hand rested lightly against her cheek, the rise and fall of her breathing. She looked like a stranger. I climbed back into bed, turned to face the wall, and didn't close my eyes for the rest of the night. Morning came like punishment. By the time the light cracked through the blinds, I hadn't slept a single minute. My head pounded, my eyes burned, and there was a tight, raw feeling in my chest, like the muscles around my ribs were trying to hold in something they couldn't contain. I watched the sunlight slowly crawl up the wall across from the bed while Kate shifted beside me, mumbling something in her sleep and pulling the covers tighter around herself. She looked peaceful. I hated that she looked peaceful. I lay there another 20 minutes waiting for her to stir. She finally did with a groan, stretching like a cat and squinting at the clock on her nightstand. Damn, she said, yawning. Did I really sleep that long? Yeah, I said flatly. She turned her head toward me. You didn't sleep, did you? I shook my head. Couldn't. She frowned with what looked like concern, but I didn't buy it. Bad dreams? No. Just thinking. She slid out of bed and walked to the bathroom. I listened to the faucet turn on, the familiar sounds of her routine, the clink of her toothbrush against the sink, the soft hum as she washed her face. It used to be comforting, those small domestic rituals. Now it felt like an act. A play she performed for an audience of one, unaware or maybe uncaring that I already knew the whole script. When she re-emerged, her smile was faint, unsure. Want coffee? Sure. She left the room and I followed a few minutes later, masking my exhaustion. She moved around the kitchen like nothing had changed, humming under her breath while the coffee maker sputtered to life. Watching her pour the creamer into her mug, I was struck by how casual everything was, how normal she made it all seem. Like she hadn't just torn a hole through her life. I sat across from her at the kitchen island. She passed me a mug, then reached for her phone, which was still face down on the counter from the night before. My pulse jumped. She picked it up, glanced at the screen, and smiled, just slightly. Then she typed something quickly with both thumbs. What's so funny? I asked. She looked up, startled. You smiled at something on your phone. Oh, just a meme my coworker sent. She waved it off, placing the phone down again, screen side down. I swear, I need to get off group chats. They're constant. I nodded, pretending to believe her. The moment she turned away to grab the milk from the fridge, I caught a glimpse of the message preview on her lock screen. Gavin Brooks. Can't stop thinking about last weekend. You're all I see. I quickly looked away before she turned around, forcing my hand not to tremble as I lifted the mug to my lips. My stomach churned. It was one thing to read those messages in silence, in darkness, alone. But to see them come in while she stood 10 feet from me, pretending everything was fine. No, insisting everything was fine. That was another kind of pain. Over breakfast, I asked her questions. Casual, polite, gentle probes. So, this San Diego trip, who was all there? She shrugged, sipping her coffee. The usual team. Maya, Charlie, Carmen. Oh, and a couple people from marketing joined late. Honestly, it was all kind of a blur. No one knew. She blinked. Not really. Why? I smiled. Just wondering. She watched me for a moment too long. You're being weird. Am I? Yeah. You've got this look on your face like you're reading between the lines. I laughed. A short, humorless sound. Maybe I am. Kate tilted her head. Is something bothering you? I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and ask her who Gavin was, what room they stayed in, if she ever thought about me when she was with him. I wanted to throw her phone against the wall and ask her to explain the note I found. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and said, "Not really." She nodded slowly. "Okay. Well, if you want to talk about anything, you can." "Thanks," I said, already planning what I'd do next. Later that morning, she went upstairs to shower. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding again, listening to the water run behind the closed door. I waited 30 seconds, then 40, then moved. I walked back to the kitchen. Her phone was there, this time plugged into the charger. Still unlocked. Still warm. I picked it up. I knew I was crossing a line, but whatever line had existed between us before, she had erased it, burned it, trampled it without a second thought. The lock screen still showed Gavin's name. I opened her messages again. Their thread had only grown since last night. There were messages from the past hour. One said, "I miss your laugh. You were magic in that room." Another, "When can I see you again?" Vegas might be easier to explain, remember? My throat dried. Vegas. The trip she mentioned last night in passing. She had said there might be a meeting there next week, depending on if it got approved. I thought nothing of it at the time. But now it had a name, a context, a lie. Scrolling further, I found photos. Selfies she had taken in a hotel room mirror, wearing that same black lingerie I had found in her suitcase. One was of her on a bed with white sheets, teasing a smile into the camera. Another was just her legs, captioned, "For your eyes only." I felt sick, physically nauseous. I backed out of messages and opened her Photos app. She hadn't deleted anything. Or maybe she'd gotten careless. Maybe she believed she'd never get caught. Albums. *TS. Videos. In one clip, barely 6 seconds long, she was whispering to the camera, "Wish you were here right now. I miss your hands." I locked the phone immediately, like it had become radioactive in my palm. I put it exactly where it had been, adjusted the charging cable so it sat just right, and walked out of the kitchen with my jaw clenched tight. When she came back downstairs, I was already seated on the couch, TV on, a blank expression glued to my face. "I'm heading out for a bit," I told her. "Oh?" she said, pausing by the door. "Where?" "Just errands. Groceries. I'll be back soon." She nodded, hair still damp, skin dewy. "Okay. Want me to start dinner later?" "Sure." She gave me a kiss on the cheek. It took everything in me not to flinch. Then I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. I got in the car, turned off the ignition, and sat in silence for several minutes. I wasn't impulsive by nature. I didn't yell. I didn't explode. I didn't throw things. But I had a limit, and I was at it. Still, I didn't want to confront her without a plan. I didn't want a shouting match where she could twist the truth or cry until I softened. I needed clarity, strategy, something airtight. So I pulled out my phone and searched. Discreet private investigator, Austin, Texas. One result stood out. Neil Carson Investigative Services. I made the call. The man who answered had a calm, matter-of-fact voice. I gave him a vague overview, just enough to pique his interest. He said we could meet today if I brought materials. I told him I had everything he'd need. The office was tucked into the second floor of a modest commercial strip off East 6th, wedged between a nail salon and a vape store. The name Carson Investigative Services was etched in cheap vinyl lettering on a frosted glass door that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. I stood outside for a second, gripping the manila folder under my arm, and tried to slow my breathing. There was something about being here that made it feel more real than anything I'd experienced so far. This wasn't a guess anymore. This wasn't me obsessing over texts or second-guessing her tone. This was action. The start of something irreversible. I knocked once. The door opened after 3 seconds. Neil Carson looked exactly like someone who'd catch your cheating spouse for a living. Late 50s, broad frame, graying temples, a half-ironed shirt with coffee stains on the cuffs. His tie was slightly askew. He glanced me up and down with quiet efficiency. "You the guy who called?" he asked. "Yeah. Come in," he cut me off. "Let's talk inside." The office was small but organized. 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, a battered desk covered in post-it notes, and a dusty Keurig machine. I sat down while he closed the blinds. "Tell me everything," he said, already pulling a legal pad from a drawer. I opened the folder and placed it on his desk. Inside, screen captures of Kate's messages, a few photos from her album, the note I'd found in her suitcase I'd snapped to **T before placing it back, and a list of calls to and from Gavin Brooks. I watched his eyes as he flipped through the pages. No shock. No judgment. Just silent calculation. "She cheating?" he asked bluntly. "Yes," I replied, my voice quieter than I expected. "How long?" "Not sure. A few weeks. Maybe months. I just found proof last night." He nodded, flipped a few more pages. "She travel often?" "Sometimes. For work." "And the guy?" "Gavin Brooks. I don't know much about him. She's never mentioned him. But they've been messaging constantly. Calls every day during her trip. There's photos. Lingerie. Hotel selfies. You name it." "Where was the trip?" "San Diego." "And the next one?" I clenched my jaw. "Vegas. Supposedly next week. I think she's planning to meet him again." That got his attention. "Well," he said, "that makes things easier." I frowned. "How so?" "Because you've got a window," he replied. "If she's dumb enough to keep this up, I can get what you need. Photos. Video. Witnesses. I'll track her from the airport if I have to." "What'll you need from me?" He leaned back in his chair. "Her full name. Work address. Frequent flyer info if you've got it. A rough itinerary. Anything that'll help me predict her movements. And I'll need to know what outcome you're aiming for." "Outcome?" "Yeah," he said. "You just want to know, or you want leverage? You planning to confront her? File for divorce? Take this to court?" I took a breath. "I want everything. Proof. Leverage. And I want to control when and how she finds out that I know." Neil gave a small, approving nod. "That I can help with." He handed me a pen. I filled out a few quick forms, nothing too invasive, just the basics. After 15 minutes, we had a plan. He would shadow her next trip, tail her from departure to arrival, follow her to the hotel, monitor her movements for 2 full days, document everything. He had a guy in Vegas who could assist on the ground. Covert cameras. Remote surveillance. Discreet interviews with hotel staff if needed. "I've done this more times than I can count," Neil assured me. "If she slips up, I'll catch it. If she's meeting him, we'll have video of them entering and leaving the room. If she takes off the ring again, I'll have the **T. I blinked. "Again?" Neil tapped the folder. "That quote in your notes. Tonight I'm not a wife. That's a dead giveaway. That kind of brazenness? That tells me she thinks she's invincible." I stood up to leave, gripping the folder like it weighed more than paper. "How soon can you start?" I asked. "I'm already started," he replied. I spent the next few days pretending life was normal. It was harder than I expected. Every smile felt forced. Every casual conversation took effort. Kate didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did and didn't want to ask questions. Either way, she moved through our home like nothing had changed. She still laughed at dinner. Still texted with that small smile curling her lips. Still played our favorite shows in the evenings, curling up beside me like nothing had happened. But every time she touched my arm, I remembered the photos. Every time she brushed her teeth beside me, I saw the messages. I waited, patient, focused, coiled, like a hunter with a loaded rifle. Then came Thursday. I was in the kitchen when she walked in wearing a navy blouse and jeans, hair curled, heels on, perfume already in the air. You heading out? I asked, sipping my coffee. Yeah, she said. Big planning session at the office. I glanced at the clock. 7:20 a.m. seems early. Gotta prep with the marketing team, she said, grabbing her laptop bag. We're locking in a few things before Vegas. She said it casually, like it meant nothing. When do you leave again? Sunday morning. Super early flight. I said. Maybe I'll go with you. That froze her, just for a second. Her hand stilled on the strap of her bag. Then she laughed. You hate Vegas. Maybe I changed my mind. You'd be so bored, she said quickly. I'll be in sessions all day, and it's not even on the strip this time. Some hotel near the airport. She was spiraling, I could see it. Talking too fast. Smiling too much. I shrugged. Just a thought. Well, she said, forcing a smile. Let's talk when I get back. Okay? Maybe we can plan something. Just the two of us. I nodded, watching her walk out the door, wondering who she thought she was fooling. Later that day, I texted Neil. She flies out Sunday. Terminal 4, 6:45 a.m. Neil got it. Tracking everything. You'll get updates daily. That night, Kate was unusually affectionate. She leaned into me on the couch. She asked if I wanted ice cream. She kissed me before bed and ran her fingers through my hair like she used to when we first dated. It was strange, almost tender, and yet I knew what she was doing. She wasn't loving me. She was rehearsing her alibi. She was trying to quiet the guilt just enough to board her flight with a clear conscience. I stared at the ceiling after she fell asleep. Not angry, not broken, just certain. Certain that she was going to do it again. Certain that I would catch her. And certain that when I did, it would be on my terms. No raised voices. No accusations. No giving her the satisfaction of seeing me wounded. I would confront her with calm precision, with everything laid bare. And when that moment came, I wouldn't just tell her I knew. I'd show her. Everything. Sunday came. I drove her to the airport, just like any supportive husband would. We sat in traffic near the terminal, listening to soft acoustic music on the radio. She talked about her schedule. Presentations, networking, quick dinners, early flights back. As if she were reading from a well-rehearsed script. When I pulled up to the curb, she leaned over and kissed me. I'll text when I land, she said. I'll be waiting, I replied, and I meant it, but not in the way she thought. I watched her disappear into the terminal, pulling her suitcase behind her, moving with purpose. I didn't drive away right away. I waited, checking the rearview mirror, then finally eased back onto the freeway, already knowing that Neil and his Vegas team had eyes on her from the moment she entered security. That afternoon, Neil texted. Neil. She checked into the Hilton Tropicana under her name, alone, at first. By evening, I received the first photos. Kate and Gavin arm in arm, laughing in the hotel bar. One *T captured her with her hand resting on his thigh. Another showed her whispering into his ear. It was like watching a film where the villain never even knew the cameras were rolling. And then, the kicker. A final image of her standing in the elevator with Gavin, slipping off her wedding ring and dropping it into her clutch. According to Neil, she had looked up at the mirrored ceiling and said, "Tonight, I'm not a wife." He had audio. I didn't ask how. I couldn't stop staring at that picture. The ring, our ring, gone from her hand like it had never mattered. The next evening, Neil delivered the final files. Video of the two entering a hotel suite just before midnight. They didn't emerge until after 10 a.m. the next day. That was all I needed. When Kate returned Tuesday night, suitcase in hand, smile wide, I met her at the door. Tired? I asked. You have no idea, she said, laughing as she stepped inside. This one was brutal. Want to sit for a bit? Sure, she said casually. I had already placed the manila folder on the coffee table. It sat there like a loaded G***N. She spotted it and paused, her smile faltering. "What's that?" "Something I need you to see," I said. "But before you open it, do you have anything you want to tell me?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "Anything you think I should know. This is your chance." Silence. I waited, and when she said nothing, I slid the folder toward her. She opened it. Slowly. Photos. **TS. Printouts. The elevator **T. The lingerie. The text where she said, "I'd do it again," in a heartbeat. I didn't speak. She did. I can explain." "No, you really can't." The days after the confrontation moved quickly. She begged, of course. Cried. Pleaded. Claimed it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that she didn't mean to fall for him. That she hadn't even realized she was drifting until it was too late. That she still loved me. But love doesn't look like hidden phones and hotel rooms. It doesn't sound like "I hate sneaking around, but I'd do it again." I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I told her plainly I was filing for divorce. And I meant it. She moved into her sister's apartment a week later. The house fell silent in the best way. No more fake laughter. No more perfume trails in the hallway. No more checking her reflection like she was trying to impress a ghost. I called Alan, a divorce attorney recommended by a coworker. When I showed him the evidence, he looked at me and said, "This won't take long." And it didn't. Kate didn't contest anything. How could she? The videos. The texts. The photographs. The ring in her hand instead of on her finger. She signed the papers within 2 weeks. In a twist neither of us expected, Gavin's wife went public. She posted a long expose on social media, **TS, a timeline, even tagged Kate's work account. The fallout was immediate. Kate lost her job, and Gavin vanished from her life like smoke. Me? I was free. It didn't feel triumphant. Not right away. There was grief. Quiet, persistent grief for the life I thought I had. For the woman I thought I knew. But there was relief too. A strange, slow-burning peace. A few months later, I found myself in a coffee shop downtown, sitting alone at a window table with a book I wasn't really reading. A woman sat down at the table next to mine, juggling her laptop, a notebook, and a large cup of coffee. She almost spilled it all and laughed at herself, glancing over with an apologetic smile. "You'd think I'd know how to function by now," she said. I smiled back. "Long day. Long week." Her name was Tess. She worked in nonprofit development. We started talking. Just small stuff. But it felt easy in a way I hadn't felt in years. We exchanged numbers. As I walked out that day, I realized something important. Kate didn't break me. She freed me. And this time I was going to build something better from the ground up on my terms with someone who saw me not as a backup plan, but as the only plan.